Hello fellow cinephiles, Film Guru here. Today I'm reviewing Secret Agent. This came out in 1936, was directed by Alfred Hitchcock and starred John Gielgud, Peter Lorre and Madeleine Carroll. This film is the second in a trilogy of Alfred Hitchcock's spy movies along with 39 Steps and Sabotage. The film is set during World War I. John Gielgud plays British novelist Edgar Brodie, who discovers that a government agency has faked his own death. He is then given orders to go to Switzerland to kill a German agent. He goes by the name of Richard Ashenden and travels with secret agent Elsa Carrington, played by Madeleine Carroll, who poses as his wife. Richard joins professional killer, the General, played by Peter Lorre, to find the clues which lead them to German agent. This trio of people set out to find out who this German agent is. There's a lot of misdirection along the way, and they end up thinking it's one person and it turns out to be someone completely different. And it's really about them trying to fulfill the mission that they've been ordered to undertake. It ends with a bang, ultimately. I really enjoyed this film. Being a big Hitchcock fan, it's good to go back and see his early sort of films, and this is definitely one of his early pictures. This was just not long after sound had come in, and he crafted really interesting and fascinating film. It's another one of his classic British films, and it was before he went to America and had the success he did there, and would ultimately return decades later in the 70s to his native land. This film really showcased Hitchcock's skills in storytelling that he would later use in his other films. It really uses the ability of no sound and how it conveys things happening, and he's able to use the camera to tell the story in a really inventive and creative way. It has his great dry British wit in it. There's many humorous moments. I really like the start of it, how we're sort of thrown into the idea that there's a funeral taking place and this soldier has died. But as that scene plays out, you start to realise that no, there actually is no one in the coffin. This one-armed soldier reveals that and then looks up to a picture, and that picture is of the person who's meant to be dead, and then we cut to seeing him being given the orders and becoming a secret agent. I thought that was really well orchestrated, all of that. And it's done in a really interesting way that has no real dialogue, and it tells you everything you need to know, and that's very, very clever filmmaking in my opinion. Hitchcock learned a lot of these techniques from the German silent cinema, how a lot of them didn't use a lot of title cards, or they were able to convey such an interesting and captivating story without any words. And that's what he sort of took from it. And a film like The Last Laugh, directed by famed German director F.W. Murnau. And this was a film that didn't have, it was silent, and it had no title cards except for one right at the end. And it really was a very captivating and interesting film, and this really inspired Hitchcock. And we get to see what he's learnt from that, and ultimately in this film, which was the early beginnings of it. And it just sort of thrusts you in. It's a very exciting and engaging film. There's a lot that happens, a lot of twists and turns. It's a very creative film. It's very well done. All the acting is solid. John Gielgud's an actor I've seen in later years. I've never really seen him in his early beginnings as a young man, and he's fantastic here. His dictation, his delivery of lines, his humorous moments, a very dry British wit that he has, which works really well for Hitchcock's film, and the dialogue that's been written for this character. And I like the interactions he has with the other characters. And I like that he's this guy who sort of falls into this, and he doesn't want to really be part of it, but he gets swept up in it and wants to serve his country, and ultimately gets mixed up in this whole thing, which is a really fascinating story, I felt, for that particular character. Peter Lorre is his great over-the-top self, playing a real character here, the General, which is sort of a man that pretends to be sort of Mexican, I guess, but he really isn't. He has curly hair and he's sort of darkened skin and an hearing. And he's kind of psychotic. He's a psychotic sort of character. He's sort of humorous and funny and fun-loving, but then he can be very violent, and he's able to kill people at a whim, you know, if he has to. And he's just fantastic in the scenes, and him and Gielgud together are great to watch. Just the way they bounce off each other, the way they interact, how they're from very different acting backgrounds, but are able to convey such interesting characters and convey convincingly the situations that the characters get into. Madeleine Carroll is an actress I'm not really familiar with, but she looks like someone from this era. There's something really fascinating about her, and she's really funny and interesting, and she has great chemistry with the two other leads. What's fascinating about her character is she gets swept up in this and she thinks it's all fun and she gets excited and it's all games and she's really into it. But then when it escalates, when people start to die, it has a real effect on her. And her shift from this fun-loving, excited character into this sort of depressive, sort of traumatized person is brilliantly captivated by this actress. She does a fantastic job. And Madeleine Carroll is another one to add to the long list of Hitchcock's catalogue of different blondes that he had in his variety of films. There's really expressive eyes and he's able to express so much without saying a word, and she's fantastic. And they all do a really brilliant job, and it starts off kind of a fun and entertaining film, and there's a lot of twists and turns along the way, and it starts to get a bit darker towards the end. But I really like what he's able to craft here and encapsulate such a fascinating film from a bygone era. These sequences that stand out in this film, and most of those to do around so much going on with no dialogue. Like there's one particular scene that takes place in a church and someone's ringing a bell in the church because someone's died. Gielgud and Peter Lorre's character are sort of standing up the top right next to the bell, and as it starts to ring, it's really loud and they're trying to talk to each other, but they ultimately can't hear each other. And then there's two little scenes where the camera zooms in on one of the actors' ears and the other guy's mouth is next to it, and we hear what they're saying. I thought that was a really interesting way to go about that scene. They couldn't hear each other, we couldn't hear them, but then he allowed us to hear what was going on. I thought that was very interesting and clever. Another sequence like that takes place that does a sort of similar thing is where the two agents go undercover to this chocolate factory where they're trying to find out how this information is spread and the messages have got through within the packaging of the chocolates. And this whole sequence is silent except for heavy machinery going in the background. But it's Peter Lorre working out what's going on. We follow his eyes, we see what's going on. And it's such a fascinating scene because you captivate the audience, you tell so much about what's going on, but you're not using any dialogue or words or anything to convey that. And I thought that was a really interesting way to go about it. And there's sequences out throughout the film where he does that many times. There's moments where they'll receive a letter that's written in German and then it slowly dissolves into what it actually says so we understand what it says, which I thought was clever. There's moments where they receive a letter that's written in a certain way but they have to decode it to know exactly what it's saying, and it sort of dissolves from what it's saying and into what it actually says, and it's clever as well. There's just a lot of transitional moments within it where they dissolve from one thing to another, which is really well handled. There's some really fantastic model work done in this film as well, with long shots, with there's a train sequence at the end that's quite extraordinarily done using models. It's brilliantly executed in that way. There's sequences throughout it where they're hiking up in the mountains and we see the model work in regards to that, the little people and the little towns, and the way he's able to use that in a convincing way is fantastic, I thought. And it, like I said, it's best achieved at the end with the train and the train crash that happens. I absolutely love that sequence and how that's portrayed. It's just a well-crafted, interesting, entertaining, engaging movie that has a lot of humor to it, but it is also sort of dramatic. There's a bit of a love story there, and it just showcases Hitchcock's skill that he had even in the early days. Final thoughts. Really, this is a great movie of its time period. It looks at the spy world, it looks at how things aren't quite what they seem, and sometimes relationships can form out of extreme circumstances. And when two strangers are working together from the opposite sex, sometimes romance can form from that. It looks at the extremes people will go to accomplish a goal, whether it's right or wrong. In their minds, it's what they have to do. They don't have any other option. The moment in the film where he wants to retire, he doesn't want anything to do with it. He just wants to sort of be with Elsa and have a relationship, but he gets sucked back into it and he can't help himself. It's like he's drawn to it. It's part of him now and he can't neglect it or stop doing it because he's so close to the end. I'm going to give Secret Agent 3.5 out of 5. I enjoyed this film. I thought it was really well done, and Hitchcock at the beginning didn't lose anything as his films went along. He just got better and better at what he did. And if you're a Hitchcock fan and you haven't seen this, I recommend this as well as 39 Steps and Sabotage. All really great spy film, and this is one of his best early films in my opinion. Anyway, that's all from me today. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please hit subscribe down the bottom. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter. Otherwise, until next time, enjoy the movies.